Titus 2. I'm going to read 1 and then I'll quickly read 3 through 5. So speak thou the things which become sound doctrine. The aged woman likewise, that they be in behaviors, becometh holiness, not false accusers, not given too much wine, teachers of good things, that they may teach the young women to be sober, to love their husbands, to love their children, to be discreet, chaste, keepers at home, good, obedient to their own husbands, that the word of God be not blasphemed.
Kind, all praises, y'all. So we diving in tonight. We have, I think it's like 10 keys, about 10 keys surrounding relationships, our relationship with the Most High, our relationship in a marriage. Some of these keys pertain to even if you're courting. Okay, these are things you should be looking for. All right. So, without further ado, one of our first keys that we're going to talk about tonight is trust in a relationship. That's a very key component right there. Um, Trust, you know, this has to be built, okay? Because without trust, a lot of things will crumble. I mean, just think about it. Even with your loved ones, your friends, family, if you can't trust somebody, it's hard to even, you don't want to be around them. You hesitate to let them in. You got to watch yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Even trusting what they're saying is uneasy. And so this is very strong. And if we're talking about relationships, you have to have this key.
Trust. Why I believe it is a key component in a marriage. It For me, I had to start and ask myself what trust was. And trust to me is the belief in reliability, honesty, goodness, and confidence that the person that I'm with or that I want to be with will do no harm, or have no harm come to me. I believe it is the most important component in a relationship because it is the first step in a marriage. When I think about it, I attribute it to Sirach 6 and 7, where it says, "Prove a friend." That's one of the one things that the Most High God always tells us to do before we give any type of belief or faith in the person coming into our own lives. We have to prove that person to make sure that person is compatible with us and or with me, in a sense of coming together and being one. I don't want to not trust this person and then marry them, and then when something that's heavy comes along, and I can't depend on you to help me through it. Um, Another scripture that comes to mind for me is Ecclesiasticus 4 and 9 through 12. That one, it states, I'm paraphrasing here, if one falleth, there'll be another that will pick you up, or, help you up, so that there also gives me that trust and gives that sense of trust that I know that the person that I chose will be able to help me through any situation. Also, with that being said, in the scriptures, it also says for a woman, when it comes to loving her husband, that's one thing she wants to have with her husband, that is that trust. If he can't trust you to follow his vision and follow his dream, what is your marriage? I feel like that's the most important and the foundational point for a marriage to be successful for me.
Two are better than one because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, the one will lift his fellow. But woe to him that is alone when he falleth, for he had not another to help him up. Again, if two lay together, they have heat, but how can one be warm alone? Verse 12, and if one prevail against him, two shall withstand him, and threefold cord is not quickly broken.
And that three-fourth core to me is the wife, the husband, and the Most High God. You can't build a successful relationship without those three components. Of course, you're going to count yourself, but the other person that's with you. You're going to have to count them in. Plus, the Most High always has to be that foundation. You have to build the relationship off of the Most High. Another component that I also just wanted to touch bases on was faith. I believe that trust and faith go hand in hand. Um, Without that, what do you have? We know what the scriptures say about faith. Faith is something that is believed, but you cannot see it. I feel like that's the same thing. That's what trust is. Once you give your trust to somebody, you don't know offhand in the beginning that you can trust this person. You have to watch, you have to look, you have to test those, try the spirit by the spirit, as they most say. Once you go into a marriage, you have to make sure that you know that these people or this person that you chose to spend the rest of your life with is going to be there for you in the long haul. I try to live my life like that with my sisters, not only in just the marriage. I feel like that's also within the community, the congregation, because we are all family, and I have to be able to trust you, especially if I'm not around, with my children. It takes a village.
Is that you go into something trusting until it's disproved.
Okay.
If that answers your question.
Yeah, and see,
Yeah.
I agree to a certain extent with certain like people with like people you already know. Maybe you already know your parents or your family members, but this is a new experience or a new adventure that you're diving into, and so you already know that, okay, you could trust them in this new experience. That's how I feel. But like when somebody you don't know, aka you're proving this new person you haven't met before, you just sitting down together at the first date for first whatever. I don't know. I kind of feel like it like, and this is just my opinion. Again, everybody's different. That how do you know you don't know you could trust this person, right? So they're kind of like showing you they can be trusted because, hey, I'm gonna let you take me out. I really don't know if I trust you to drive this car and get us there safe, but so I guess it is kind of trusting that, okay, he's gonna get me there, but then he's showing me he can get me there. I'm gonna trust that you're gonna take me home when you're supposed to take me home. I'm gonna trust that you're gonna, provide for me, and down the line you're gonna say what you're gonna do, but they still have to kind of show you that in earning it at the same time.
So like sandwiching faith and consistency with the trust.
Yeah.
Right, 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 right. Kind. Okay, so I think we agree. Yeah, I do agree. I do agree.
I strongly believe that trust and faith go hand in hand, because that's me giving you blind permission, so to say, to take care of me without like making it a duty of yours. Like you said in the example of taking me out on a date, I'm trusting you initially because I agreed to go on this date with you, but I don't know 100% for sure that you're going to get
Yeah.
me there safely. But I'm giving you that because I have faith
Yeah.
that
Right.
you're going to do that. So
Right.
in turn, I also trust you to do
Yeah.
what you say you're going to do.
Exactly. In this courting process, I'm going to give you that leeway. Like, okay, the trust is there. I'm trusting the process that we're going to do what we need to do, get counsel when it needs to be, that you're going to handle it. When we have conflicts, that you're going to handle it level headed and not in your emotions, all this stuff, and of course, we're learning each other. So not necessarily that trust is broken, but maybe, you had to work on obviously we're building trust because it's not like, boom, yeah, I could trust you. No, like, you know what I'm saying? So you give the trust, like you try to say, you give the trust, and you do not impose your insecurities on your spouse or your betrothed while you're doing it, because that is not. So if you have insecurities, sisters, please work on those insecurities, because you come on, we don't trust nobody.
That's a good story.
It can be a hindrance. It can be a hindrance.
It will. I mean, if you have trust issues with men, why are you going into a relationship talking about you know what I'm saying? It's just going to get in the way. Whatever it is, somebody that cheated on you before, you cheated, so now you imposing them that they might cheat on you. That's just an example. It could be something else, lying, not being there, somebody not being there for you, and just whatever it is, if you have an insecurity, do not impose it on your spouse. And you should be working on that first and foremost. But then you still gonna have to work on it inside a relationship because it's gonna look differently now. So you're working on it. Now you got to put it into action. You know what I'm saying? And
Yep, which
go ahead.
brought me up to just one little thing that, recently I was in the hospital, like I was telling you guys, and when I got out of the hospital, I kind of got a little upset with my husband because it wasn't that he wasn't trying to help me, and it was kind of like I kind of felt like he was just like dismissing the things that were going on with me at that moment. And instead of me taking that initiative like I usually do and just going boisterous and saying, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, I had to take a step back and just analyze the situation for a minute for what it was, because he was showing up. He just wasn't showing up how I wanted him to show up,
For sure.
but he was showing up.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
Fine.
Con.
I
That's
had to
like
kind
what
of
we
really,
said. Yeah, that's like what I was saying early in the conversation when what was it? When I said early in the conversation about my betrothed, right? Madawan, that there were some issues and barriers there at first, but I had to, after praying about it, I had to resolve in myself, look, the Most High said you need to trust the Most High and trust this brother, and then things will get
Mhm.
easier. And I'm just saying, well, what you said, how you kind of just went a different route than what you typically would and thought about it. I had to do the same thing in a recent situation, like a few weeks ago too, to turn things around. So, Con.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All praises. Look at us learning early.
And a spouse can help you to work through those insecurities if that's what you have, because if they haven't let you down or broken your trust, now somebody's showing you, hey, you know what I'm saying, this looks different now, you know what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
your spouse is supposed to be your better, I don't know, some people don't like to use that term, but they're supposed to bring out the best, help you build yourself
Best
up,
in you.
best in
Mm-hmm.
you, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
so we need, I think this was brought up, maybe not with like Adam and Eve, and I think we bring that into some of our relationships sometimes, like pointing fingers, kind of like what you would almost did, sis, before you look at yourself, like,
Yep.
okay, Adam should have, or Adam did point at Eve actually, and then Eve pointed at Adam, but yet I know she pointed at the devil, the adversary. But the Most High
Yep.
did what? Everybody was at fault because nobody took accountability for themselves, right? So again, looking within and making sure that you're blameless in the matter. And like you said, sis, that was a good example. Like when we're building with each other, we have to give each other some grace, some patience,
Mm-hmm.
and not look at it like, okay, this is how it's supposed to look, but what is the actual reality here? Because, for example, real quick, when I wash the dishes with Clorox, Ajax, this and that, and all this other stuff. And I make sure, but then my spouse, he just gonna run the water on it while he's washing it. So it's rinsing it while he's washing it. So I'm like, but I have to let that go. You know what I'm saying? That the
Mm-hmm.
dishes, they're gonna get done. I wanted it done, it's done. And you know what I'm saying? That's what he said he was going to do. It might not to my liking, but
Mm-hmm.
you know what I'm saying? We can trust the Most High. Why is that?
Well, first thing that comes to mind is because he doesn't change.
It's simple. We don't gotta dig deep. He cut and dry. He said what he means, and he means what he says, and he does what he says.
You say the Shema, you say, Hear, O Israel, Yahweh, our power, Yahweh is one. And I'll love you with all my heart, all my soul, and all my might. And that's kind of like what trust is. Psalm 71:1 says, In you, Yahweh, do I put my trust. Let me never to be put to confusion. That could be like an example of that, of like why you say that.
Right. No confusion. You're not going to be put to confusion. And then one that pops up to me right now, if you know where it is, but lean not trust in the Most High and lean not onto your own understanding. You should be able to lean on this person's word and not, and lean on the fact that you can trust, right? And in this person, okay, and you don't have to lean on something else that might fall, that might fail, because your trust is here.
Proverbs
You
3
know,
and 5.
Proverbs 3 and 5. Can you read that real quick?
Trust in Yahweh with all your heart and lean not unto your own understanding.
So
Oh,
you asked the question like, how is it that we can trust the Most High? And so when I think about trust, we think about like with people, we may start off trusting them, but the way they chip away at that trust is if we're lied to, or if we've been deceived, or just various things. But Numbers 23 and 19, Yah is not a man that he should lie, neither the Son of Man that he should repent. Had he said, and shall he not do it? Or had he spoken, and shall he not make it good? So that's one reason also how I find it easy to trust Yah, right? That he's not a man that he should lie. He won't disappoint us. He won't let us down. And so we don't have a reason to distrust him because what he said he's going to do, period. We just have to trust him.
ooh.
Oh, wait.
You got it, sis.
That's funny. It's a random like modern day thought of like the shoulds. You get different like things you're supposed to do in business or in corporations, and they do all these like trainings. And I remember we were talking about resiliency training and kind of like people's perspective when it comes to fixed mindset and growth mindset, and how when you get used to saying you should, it should, and the way that they worded it, which kind of still speaks true, is that a should is something that's coming from you. So when it was saying, Yah's not a man that he should lie, neither son of man that he should repent. And it's one of those things that like when we do it, that's what's supposed to happen. But that's also one of those things where people have chosen not to do it. It's almost like a free will thing. It's not something that's concrete where somebody can say, you're right. It's now embedded upon you. Are you going to take that as to be true? And if you're not, then you're not
Right,
going to do it.
right.
So he don't have that
Exactly.
option of saying, "Yeah, well, maybe and then no, this is what it is." We're the ones that are kind of like waverings a lot of the time. That's the whole point.
When you have trust, okay, that makes that spouse, that significant, whether it's the man or the woman, makes that person want to lean in and confide. You know what that means? You drop your guard, you feel relaxed. It removes anxiety. Okay. You drop that guard. A lot of us have that wall up. And a lot of times we have a wall up because we can't let people in because why? We don't trust you up in here. I can't do, you know what I'm saying? We know how that feels. So the minute you start building that trust, and that was going to be a question I was going to ask in the beginning. Should trust be given? You know how I say trust, some people give you your trust until you break it, or should it be earned? Okay. So,
Oh,
It's
wait.
given.
Okay. Is benefit of the doubt considered trust? Meaning
right,
I'm going to trust you. I'm going to take that risk. But
right.
nowadays, is that considered the same thing? Because
Yeah,
I'm not saying it should be, but it's like,
right.
where
But
Do
see,
you
are we
think
getting it?
maybe grace? Could that be considered the grace that you
exactly.
extend to a person
Yeah,
when you give
That's
them the benefit of the doubt?
right. That's what
Okay.
it kind of
yeah.
sound like. There's a fine
Mhm.
Sounds like
line, right?
grace. Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like there's a fine line right there, like, but you know what I mean?
I'm at the point in my life where I'm like, you have to fill this application out and wait for it to come back.
Wait, hey, you know what I'm saying? And maybe some things happen where you need to move like that. But the point
Yeah.
is of you getting to that point, or whatever you got to do to build that trust, it needs to be built. It's not about being perfect, but you have to be consistent. you're not gonna break the trust. I know for sure when he said he gonna do this, it's gonna get done. And if he don't do it, ain't nobody gonna do it. You know what I'm saying? You ain't gotta go run out there and do it. Speak to me. Let me listen. Okay, y'all speak to me if you know, because sometimes, a lot of times in relationships, when you can't trust that somebody's gonna keep their word, you gotta go step in and do it now. You gotta run to you know what I mean? And then a lot of times, it's like we have husbands telling their wives they're doing too much, they're trying to be mothering, or they're taking over, or trying to take the reins. Um, that will not happen a lot of the times if they're consistent with what they're saying, because you're not going to let the the you're not going to let things fall apart. It's within us to be that help. Yeah.
Because Jess was discussing this last night, the story of Jezebel, and how her husband wanted something and she took the reins to get it for him, and it resulted in sin. So there's a fine line with a sister taking over or taking the reins or control of a situation, or allowing her husband time to figure it out and do it himself, which, and then encouraging him as a helpmeet. So we have to be,
Right.
super careful with what it is we're taking over,
Mm-hmm.
because we feel like they're not doing it
Right.
fast enough for us.
Right. And I'm glad you said that, because we want to make sure that we put in perspective that we're not just, because again, it's not, what I said before is, if he's not going to do it, then it shouldn't get done, kind of thing. But then you have to the point where, okay, there's, the leak's been going so long and he said he was going to do it, or she said she was going to do this, and now there's a hole in the ceiling, there's water coming on the floor, like water falling on the floor. You know what I mean? But let me back it up again. Let me back
Hello.
it up. This is saying that when you have the trust, and this is both sides. So don't tell your spouse you're going to do something and you don't do it. That creates cracks and holes in the ceiling. That's all we're saying. Okay? Because we should not be taking over what that man's job is. That's like saying, you know what, let me take off this skirt for a minute, put your pants on, and get up there and like, we shouldn't be doing that. So it takes two to build trust. You got it, Kaya.
So two things, but I'll start backwards because you just said you gotta say what you mean, right, and do it.
Yes.
So Matthew and James talks about this. I'll do Matthew 5:37. But let your communication be yeah, yeah, no, no. For whatsoever is more than these comes of evil. So James kind of says the same thing. Swear not, neither by heaven, neither by the earth, neither by any other oath, but let your yes be yes and your no be no, lest you fall into condemnation. And it's basically what you just said, as far as the example of being sure where the line is, or what the actual task is that maybe we're not supposed to take over. And other people might use usurp, because it could still be a role that a man probably should do, or if he said he was going to do it, let him do it. But the other example to that, because you brought up Jezebel, the other example I would say would be Zipporah,
Okay.
or Abigail, right? She let him handle all that. Nabal decided to say what he had to say. She wasn't there. That wasn't the right thing to do. And so she had to save her life. Zipporah, on the other hand,
And his.
when Moses fell sick and she had to circumcise their son, this particular case, she was the daughter of a priest, a Midianite priest, so she had an idea of what they were supposed to do from that sense of what's supposed to happen to the children of Israel, even though she was a Midianite daughter. She still had to save their son, because Moses didn't do what he was supposed to do, and he was about to die, and they knew he was about to die too early,
Right.
if she just let it
Right.
go. So it's really cool how you could see three different examples of which way to go. And I'd say the other two we just mentioned is not a middle and an end, but it's just the other side, and two different examples of where one made wrong decisions, and then the other one, it didn't seem wrong at the time, but it was still like another decision where she still stepped in, but actually directly spoke to her husband in real time, whereas Abigail spoke to him after the fact,
Yeah.
and
But
that fell upon him as
but I
well.
would say what Abigail, remember, she went to David humbly on Nabal's behalf. So
Right. And that's the other example I mean is that, okay, if we decide to step in and take over, now we're in the role of what was supposed to happen. You're on the behalf of the household. You know, you're not necessarily
Right.
speaking for yourself, but you're still speaking on behalf of the household. And in this sense, you're communicating a bunch of different things: meekness, humility, and what you was actually owed, right? In hopes that this will still um, be waived and you won't be judged
Right.
and killed. So that's a big risk for her to take, right? And she
Right.
decided to do it. And then the other case that we mentioned was Zipporah, that was a whole nother mission, right? That was a mission that Yah told him that he needed to be doing and set forth a path. And he
Yeah.
almost got interrupted based off of whatever the decision was that made him fall sick, to almost die. And
Yeah.
in the prophecy, from his end sooner than we needed it to be.
And so in a nutshell, pretty much, being in the spirit, a lot of the times when you find yourself kind of being a helpmeet, because that's what it is. Sometimes, things are not getting done. So you gotta pitch in a little bit more. Things that you normally wouldn't do on a normal basis, you got to do a little bit more now. But again, we're just talking about when the trust is not there, and when things are being said that should be done, and it's not happening. This creates cracks in the foundation, because then that person, you're no longer really reliable. Okay. And now I feel like I got to do more now because I haven't been able to rely on you to do this. We don't have that with the Father. We don't worry about with the Father. So this is what our relationship needs to look like. If I could rely on my Father, I should be able to rely on you. When you build in trust, you don't want to feed into if you have an insecurity as a wife, you don't want to feed your insecurities while you build in trust. That's like putting a brick and then putting up some instead what to put in between the bricks, the cement thing or whatever. Instead of putting cement, you putting water between the bricks. That's what that is. That's gonna look like. You cannot feed insecurities. And what I mean by that is, because you want to build trust, your spouse should have some sense of, I don't know another word to say, maybe some sense of freedom, that, okay, she trusts me to go here, there, and not feed into her insecurity that I might be doing something else because I've been gone for 2 hours, or, give me that trust. We do it with our children. You trust them to do so and so, but if you come back home and it's like, oh, well, you feed into your insecurities, like, oh, you wasn't where you said you was going to be, and there was no proof of that. That's not building trust. The other, your spouse is looking at you like, well, I did go where I was supposed to go. I mean, I came home 15 minutes later, but that was because of the traffic, not because I was somewhere else I shouldn't be or doing something. You know what I mean? Just as a small example. This is trust. And again, going back to, should it be earned or given? When you're earning, when you give trust, give it. Give it. Okay, until it's proven that it was broken, not because of your insecurities.
That's why I like the way you ended it, because you just said that as far as anybody should just be given the trust until it is proven, because then what it does, at least from how you mention it, is that the earned portion of trust could mean that you did something wrong, right? Let's just say given the trust is the righteous thing, because we're supposed to trust everybody, right? And the minute that something is broken or has changed, where it's a sin, a trespass, that type of thing, now
Right.
it has to be earned. And so the earning is like a result sometimes, or possibly of a sin. You get what I mean? It's almost like we answered it, and it's just sometimes the modern day thing, it still feels great, because I was still in my head thinking like, but I like how you said it, because now it's like, also then earning trust for the most part within our people could mean I did or they did something wrong, and now it has to be built back up.
It has to be
But is
built back up.
earning trust back of something of the flesh or of the spirit? Because I hear what you're saying, but requiring to earn trust back is going to be a flesh thing. Because I don't
Right.
know, I just keep
Read the
thinking about
sin.
how the Most High, regardless of us breaking His trust over and over again, He forgave us. Like He gave us chance. Like, so do you just forgive and then keep going, or do you continue to fight your flesh and
I,
again with that feeling?
I don't know if it's so much, and there again, it might be a fine line there too. Yes, we want to put our emotions and feelings into it, but even though the Most High forgive us, He didn't just forgive us because He just forgave us. We had to come back to Him. We had to
Yeah.
come back to now. Okay, so you broke you broke the covenant, which was a trust bond, right? And now you got to show me. You still got to do these things. Right? I forgave you, but you still got to do these things. It's like a boundary was crossed. You know what I mean? And that's
Yeah.
what the scriptures say about not using wisdom moving forward. You're gonna allow somebody to keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, and you're just like, oh, trust.
Well, all praises the Most High. Let us do it
Fine.
over and
Because
over again,
David,
because
when David
we'll be in
sinned, when
trouble.
David messed up and fell, he
No,
was
no.
in trouble. He went back to the Most
I
High.
am a firm believer of boundaries. Firm
Mm.
believer, because I know the Most High is not the author of confusion, and He did not put us here to be abused by one another. I find that a lot of congregations
Absolutely.
try to use those scriptures to make abusive people stay in your life. Right, but a lot of congregations
I know what you mean, sis. Yeah, the same
use
scriptures we talking about, they'll use it.
Right. Right.
Yep,
Yeah,
twist it.
then what is it? Then what is it? Well, how are you moving in wisdom now? Okay, this was happening before. Am I going to do it the same thing again? That's like going down the same road.
Like, why is that whole chapter in Ecclesiasticus on try a friend? Like, what? Why?
That's right.
If I'm going to continue to let this person kick me.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Yeah, and you so you have to be ready and willing to build back the trust, but we're gonna move a little bit differently now. You know what I'm saying? Because I want to get back there to that point. And this is exactly because this is key in a relationship. So, people do things, people do things in relationships, and we want to get in our feelings, but we want to build back that trust for the sake of the relationship because it has to be there.
So I know we're talking about components of marriage, and I was just wondering, like, how does that really look when trust has been broken in a marriage? Because now we're not supposed to hold grudges, harbor grudges, or anything like that. But how do you begin to build trust in a marriage after it has been broken? Like, what does that look like? That's what I wanted to comment on, but I also wanted to share something that I learned, that I was really, kind of blaming my husband for a lot of things. And this brother, he presented 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 1 through 6. Mind you, had it highlighted, underlined, asterisks, and everything for years. Very familiar with those scriptures. But when he read them to me, I was like, yeah, I know. But then I went back after class and I read it several times over, and I realized that, it hit different. And I realized that I had a responsibility to my husband as well. And that, so the scripture, 1 Peter chapter 3, I'm just going to read 1 and 2, because for me, that's what resonated with me. Likewise, ye wives, be in subjection to your own husbands, that if any obey not the word, they also may without the word be won by the conversation of the wives, while they behold your chaste conversation coupled with fear. And so in those scriptures, I realized that I had a responsibility to my husband, and I had to present, myself. My conversation had to be a chaste conversation coupled with fear. Now, a lot of the times my reaction may not have been, proper, appropriate, or righteous. But perhaps that might be the holdup for my husband being won over because of my actions and my response. So for me, like I said, it definitely hit different. And so now we're talking about trust. I'm like, okay, so when trust has been broken in a marriage relationship, because we definitely treat our marriage relationship different than we treat any other relationship that we have with, people outside our marriage. So while I think that having people, like prove themselves and stuff like that to, regain our trust, I do think that's important. But what does it really look like in a marriage? Because that's a different type. That's a different type of covenant.
But we have to stay blameless, right? Or make sure we are blameless in the matter. When we first of all, so we're gonna go into communication. Was there effective communication there? Okay, because if not now, obviously moving forward on both ends again, this communication needs to happen. Clear, effective conversation, acknowledging, right, from both sides. Okay, because like you said, maybe there was something you lacked or didn't do on your end, okay, as to why this situation happened where the trust is now not there or was broken. Okay, so both parties have to acknowledge something, and apologies need to be made on both sides.
It's okay. So Matthew, it would somebody who gets offended and they go, hey, I didn't like how you did it, or you messed up, or this is what you did. The person who made this offense, according to that person, is either going to try to justify it so they can wiggle out of it when they actually are wrong. Because we're talking about the people that are wrong. We're not talking about, maybe the delivery just didn't suit. That's a different conversation. It's like this person was wrong. It was brought to them that what they did was wrong, and there was a trespass, or you sinned against your brother or your sister, and now they're trying to justify their behavior with no apology or with something else that to them sounds like an apology. So like you said, it's the person who offended should be the one apologizing, and the person that went to you who felt offended by the action is supposed to accept it and do some other things and maybe apologize on their end as well, because it's whoever brought it up first, essentially, if you're being honest about it. But sometimes if you don't bring it up and you're the one who actually did the offense, you need to hear the whole matter.
It was a simple matter between two other sisters. Like, okay, so that person that broke your trust or offended you, or that spouse that broke your trust, didn't come and apologize or try to fix the situation. Again, now you would be the one now to say something, because we don't want to let things linger. Now you're hurt. Now you're dwelling, you're probably going to sleep upset, whatever it is, because your trust was broken by your spouse. So if it wasn't brought up then and there, I do think we should approach the matter, because we don't want to let it, that's something you're sweeping under the rug and it's just going to get filthy, So bring it up, because maybe they don't think that they had did anything wrong, or they were trying to figure out a way to bring it up to you without really whatever it is, but you're being two adults about it, especially in a marriage. So in any case, now we're here at the table, we're acknowledging, we're giving apologies, we're being empathetic and sympathetic with each other, because we both need each other's help to build this trust bond, right? And so this action must be consistent. We don't want to just say, hey, you did this and leave it there. Hey, you did this, so now I need you to resecure me. I need you to retighten this belt, because words mean nothing if not followed by actions, and those actions mean nothing if they're not consistent. And then rebuild those boundaries, rebuild it. Remember, we had a conversation before that if you do not set boundaries and revisit them sometimes, because maybe the boundaries went from here to here, maybe so, things change every season, something change. Let's revisit our, components. Let's revisit our boundaries. I no longer have this thing going on. It's fine. We don't need to do it. Whatever it is, you need to sit down as a couple to the table and make sure that y'all square is squared and it's good. You know what I mean? And then be patient. Okay. Like Larissa said, and I understand what she's saying, because in a marriage, like, we want things like this, or we expect the spouse to be doing certain things and certain how we think it should be, but we have to have understanding, okay? Because we all fall short. But it's the actions on that person's end and your patience while they're proving to you to rebuild this trust that is going to mesh.
So Ephesians chapter 4, verses, I'm going to actually read 26 through 32. And we are familiar with this one as well once I start reading it. Be you angry and sin not. Let not the sun go down upon your wrath, neither give place to the devil. Let him that stole steal no more, but rather let him labor, working with his hands the thing which is good, that he may have to give to him that needs. So I'm gonna stop right there. When we were just talking about, like, is trust given or earned, right? The other one is the one that stole, let him steal no more. If he lied, let him lie no more. Find a way to give them time to repay it, especially if they're willing to, right? Verse 29, let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers. And grieve not the Holy Spirit of God, whereby you are sealed unto the day of redemption. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice. And be you kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God, for Christ's sake, has forgiven you. So that's a mouthful, right? And we just literally said that, mentioned all that. So verse 31, when it's talking about all of the things, the bitterness, the wrath, the clamor, the anger, the evil speaking, we can still say what we need to say, right? To our husbands, to the person that we want to spend the rest of our lives with. They're courting, and we're trying to figure out if this is going to work, or if it's a definite, we're just trying to put in a wedding date. We can use this because the emotional part of us still wants to throw that extra emphasis, because we're still in it, right? Maybe we haven't fully forgiven all of that, but the bitterness, the clamor, all of those things, we need to forgive ourselves for that, but then be able to righteously say it. Because when you start righteously saying stuff, and you righteously judge somebody for what they did was wrong, whether it was a child or your significant other, you feel stirred up, right? Because it says, be you angry and sin not. You feel stirred up, but you don't necessarily feel as bad for saying what you had to say to them. Now, it may still feel bad that you had to say it, but you're not going to be really crying, saying like, oh, I should have never did it. It may feel like that in the beginning because you're used to doing it a different way. But once you try to remove the emotion from it and you say it and you keep it concise and you try not to go into the whole thing, you almost become a lawyer in a sense, right? A good lawyer, not one of them lawyers that be just trying to speak in circles. But you become concise, you got your notes, you thought about it, you prayed on it, you waited, you took a deep breath, whatever. You can still do all that without having that malice behind you That
Yeah.
way, the tenderheartedness, the grace, the humility, the meekness, the trembling with fear, trembling of Yahweh fear, all of that, that chase part of it from us, can flow through us, and it can almost give you that confidence. Maybe the trust, part of that trust was that you weren't speaking up for yourself in real time. You know what I mean? Maybe you were just letting people do whatever they wanted and just thinking, I'll let y'all handle it. But you still need to find 10 toes down. You need to find your place in that. And man,
You're right.
man,
Yep. Yep.
we got to work on that. But that's part of an example of like,
Yeah.
it happened, but if we can regroup and bring it back
Right.
up and have a better resolution,
Right.
then that's the best step forward, because we're not always going to get it right in the beginning.
Exactly.
But and
Exactly.
if you in the middle of it and you realize something says change it up, that's
Mhm.
y'all speaking to you too. That's the Holy
Right.
Spirit speaking to you too. Like, hey, change it
Right.
in real time, because that could happen to us. We don't gotta wait that long to switch it up. You could be like, ah, and then
Yeah.
you realize they
Mhm.
done tuned out, and then you lower your voice, you give
Right.
it a minute, you say some things, you say, you know what, that's all I have to say right now.
Yeah.
And if there's anything else you want to say, I love you. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
You could literally just read the room and be able
Mhm.
to make a shift real quick.
And all this, the fruits of the spirit have to kick in while that trust is being built if it was broken. You know, not being bitter and angry and mad, because then the person that's trying to build a trust, now you can imagine how that feels, like they're trying and you're just over there still boiling and steaming. Like, I know what it is to not have trust in a relationship when it is to be is stepped on and broke. It wasn't a clear, when it's not a clear key component in your marriage. It's just like, oh, it's there. No, it should be a strong one of them strong pillars in a marriage. Okay. That was we had for tonight. Most high willing, we'll see you again, same time, same
All right.
place,
Same place,
same
same
beauty.
beauty,
Chase made is our duty.
beauty.
All praises to the Most High.